Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Aunt Voltie, and over the November 14th to 16th weekend there were two massive 7-point Highlander events. One was the event to end all events with a Black Lotus up top, as well as an invitational on the Friday and the Sydney Showdown on the Sunday. I've done the stats for the Sydney Showdown and the event to end all events, so today we're going to be going through the Black Lotus event. And then I will also be releasing the video with the stats for the Sydney Showdown as well. So some quick stats to start things off. We had 310 players. I believe that was the registered number, and about 304 attendance, 305 attendance. There were 12 rounds of Swiss split across 2 days before it cut to top 8. The top 8 decks had 6 unique decks across 5 archetypes. So we had 2 Grixis pilots, 2 Storm pilots, 1 colorless shops, 1 green-white shops, an 8-point Blue Moon deck, and a mono-green lands deck. So out of a field of 300 players, having one top 8 deck that is an 8-point deck is pretty good. I would have obviously liked to have seen more, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. For the rundown of the pilots, we had Grixis by Matthew, Storm by Richard, Colorless Shops with Tom, and Grixis with Christopher, rounding out the top 4, and then Mono Green Lands for Beckett, 8-point Blue Moon for Jared, Storm for Michael, and then I was on Green White Shops, and I came in 5th or 6th, I think. So the most played pointed cards for the event. No real surprises here in terms of the culprits that you're seeing, although the numbers are always a little bit different going from event to event. Force of Will, Tamiyo, Deathrite, Ragavan, Bowmasters. None too surprising here, although pretty big uptick in Bowmasters, I would say. And then Misstep, Psychic Frog, Murktide, Strip Mine, and Urza Saga rounding it out. The fact that Force of Will was in a third of the decks in the room very clearly indicates to me that people thought blue was powerful, but they were also aware of the combo decks that were running around the format. The top cards by point buy, this is a pretty similar list, although technically more points were spent on Psychic Frog than any other card over the course of the weekend. Considering it just went from 1 to 2 points, seeing it be the most played card in terms of point buy is a pretty substantial result, considering it was also one of the most played cards anyway, without the point buy label there. Although Lewis does get to sneak in at 63 total points. The most played mainboard cards, these cards are not going to be surprising, however the order that they are in is probably quite interesting. So Thoughtseize being the most played main deck non-land card was quite surprising considering Force of Will was the most played pointed card. The vast majority of Force of Will decks are playing Brainstorm, but clearly a large majority of the Force of Will decks were playing Thoughtseize, and then a bunch of the other decks that were not playing Force were also playing Thoughtseize. So it was in over half of all of the decks in the room. We then have Dismember, which is a pretty reasonable pairing with Thoughtseize, Brainstorm, and then Inquisition being in the top 4, Fatal Push, Bolt, Ponder, and then Baragoth and Emperor of Bones sneaking into the top 10 as creatures, which is not too uncommon. I think the last couple of times I've done the stats, 1 or 2 of the top 10 played cards were creatures, but this time around 2 of them made it in, but they are in the same color, which is pretty telling to me. And then Probe rounded it out. The most played sideboard cards, again, no surprises here. We have both Rebs, both Bebs, although Ashiok and Consign being so highly played, so Consign tying with one of the Bebs and Ashiok actually overtaking all 3, was very, very interesting to me. Again, a concession to the metagame share of certain combo decks. We then have Carpet, which is the best anti-blue card, Submerge, which is the best anti-green card, Toxic Deluge, and then Graft Digger's Cage, which is a new addition. Previously, we had Ghost Vacuum and Unlicensed Hearse as the most commonly played artifacts in the sideboard as graveyard hate options, but Grafdigger's Cage being able to tag Storm where the others can't really, very clearly nodded to by the player base. So for the top pointed cards in terms of their performance by a top 8 conversion factor, as always, this particular slide is not as telling as the winning conversion factor, but for inclusivity's sake, we have Mox Emerald, Black Lotus, Mishra's Workshop, Tinker, Tolarian Academy, Mana Vault, Planar Nexus, Crop Rotation, Loot Tree, and Urza's Saga. So of these are cards that had an appearance in the top 8 and their particular conversion factor within that scope. So anything that showed up a lot and managed to put one copy into top 8 is going to be closer to the 1.0 mark. So the worst pointed cards, and this is by a very specific metric, this ranking is basically cards with the highest play rate that did not convert any copies to the top 8. So Deathrite, The One Ring, Caracas, Broadside, Fourth Eolingus, Skullclamp, Fable, Reanimate, Snapcaster Mage, DT, and Sol Ring. These were the most populous cards in the room that did not put a copy into top 8. So any pointed cards that aren't on either the previous slide or this slide would be falling in that middle ground. So the top pointed cards by winning conversion factor, so this is cards that had at least one performance that went 7-5 or better, ratioed against the number of total copies. So Gifts Ungiven had a perfect record, Mox Emerald, Black Lotus, Mishra's Workshop, Tinker, Time Vault, Tolarian Academy, Loot Tree, Intuition, and Breach also coming in there. And then this slide, which is, in my opinion, the most relevant, this is the top performers by a winning conversion factor that had at least 5 copies convert to a 7-5. So here we have Lotus, Workshop, Tinker, Tolarian Academy, Loot Tree, Intuition, Underworld Breach, Planar Nexus, Mana Vault, and Luris. I think realistically, if you are trying to understand what pointed cards did the best over a moderately sized sample, then this is the slide. And if you're looking at PPD and you're looking at what people have been complaining about or upset about in terms of play patterns, you'll likely see all of the offenders that are on this slide. The worst pointed cards by winning conversion factor, basically this is the most populous cards in the room that did not put any copies into 7-5. I'm only going to talk about the 5 slot here, but ET, Oath of Druids, Mox Jet, VT, and Mana Crypt. There were 5 people playing these cards in the entire room, and none of them did better than 7-5, or none of them did 7-5 or better. So if you're looking for the worst cards, these are some of them, although the worst pointed cards that did manage to convert but had a below 1.00 rating, those would also be contenders. So the top unpointed cards by winning conversion factor with at least 4 copies. This is just a list of cards that are not pointed that did really, really well. So Eladamri's Call, which is a Nadu card, and then a bunch of Storm cards. We have Metamorphose, Stormscale Scion, Beseech the Mirror, Citadel, Dark Petition, and Tendrils. Weathered Runestone and Cityscape Leveler and Khan Sign of Urza being shops cards, and then Transmute Artifact to round it out. So for the general archetype data, this is the 304 deck list that we had for the event, broken down into their subcategories. So for blue X midrange, so your Grixis, your Esper, etc., that made up 21%, which is a little bit lower than I thought it would be. The non-blue midrange decks like Jund and Mardu came up at 18%. Full all-in combo decks also came up at 18%, so your Reanimator, your Thoracle. Aggro or True Aggro is at 13%, and this is your prowess, your initiative decks, your legends decks. Mid-range combo, which is the Walks decks and the Nadu decks, where they're able to play a normal game, but have the ability to blow you up. That's at 13% as well. Big Mana came in at 8% with 24 copies, which is pretty telling here that, 8% of the room brought Big Mana, but 2 copies made the top 8. And then Control, so Jeskai Control, Blue Red Moon, for example, 9% and put 1 copy in. And then for the 8-point decks, we had 61 players bring 8-point decks, so 20%-ish. And 10 of the pilots went 7-5 or better. So 1 in 6 8-point pilots managed to convert into a winning record. A big shout out and a big thank you to Pat and Isaac and the MTG Bazaar staff. The judge team and the event staff also did really, really well, and I thoroughly enjoyed the MTG Bazaar commentary team and everything that they pulled off. I've introduced this slide to the stats videos because these events are a really big deal, and a lot of people sort of take for granted how much effort gets put into them. So a special shout out to all of the team that made the event to end all events happen. But yeah, that's the stats. As always, the data will be in the description below. I'm also going to put up the PowerPoint presentation in the description as well, so if you want to reread any of the slides from here, you can open that up as well. But otherwise, I will be bringing you all the Sydney Showdown videos soon. But till then, see you later.